whenever you hit a pickleball, you always should be aiming for a specific target. So in this video, I'm gonna take you through all the best targets for every shot and situation that you might find yourself in a pickleball game. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where to aim every shot. Starting with the serve. So the serve is one of the best shots to have targets on because you have full control when you're serving, meaning it's easier to aim it than any other shot. So while you don't want to get too risky on a serve, the safest option is to go deep body to the backhand. So when I say deep body, I mean you're aiming towards your opponent's backhand, but closer to their body. So as you can see, this target right here is not that close to the lines, so it's low risk, but a lot of players struggle with this deep backhand. And by deep, I mean further in the court. So this is a great serve to aim for if you're looking for something safe, reliable, but effective. And I should also mention, when you're hitting a serve, you almost always want to aim it deep. So you should try to be getting it past this imaginary line right here when you're hitting it, regardless of where you're aiming it. The next serve that works very well is if your opponents are standing too far out wide, you can sort of go right here and catch them off balance. So if you're playing someone really fast, might not be worth it, but if your opponent's not very fast and they're giving you a lot of space, you can really go for an opening where they're leaving part of the box open. So the same thing applies the other direction. If he is standing closer to the middle, you can kind of go for one of these angle serves out here and get him off balance. And the same thing applies on this side, guys. You can go for this deeper backhand target. It's a very reliable option. You can go for the angle. You can go for this open middle if it is open. It's important to note, don't go for these serves unless you see an opening and it is worth it. Also, you want to get the serves deep, but you do not want to be aiming for the line back here because obviously there's a lot of risk. If you go close to the line, you might end up hitting it too far and missing. You should always sort of be aiming right in this middle portion of the back third of the box. So I like to aim for the back third of the box, kind of going for the middle, because sometimes you'll hit it too hard. You don't want to accidentally hit it long. So this is a good range to be going for. Here, you'll hit deep serves that have a hard effect on your opponent, make it harder for them to hit a good return, but you minimize the risk of going long. Now we're going to talk about where you should be aiming your return. So assuming we're the players that just served, and this is our side, these are your best targets. As you can see, there's three. The first is a down the middle return. The down the middle return is great because it can confuse your opponents as to who should hit the third shot, and you minimize the risk of missing the ball wide. The other two targets are in the center of each box, and these are to aim for a specific player who you think might have a worse third shot. So if you're playing me and you think my third shot is worse than Drew's, then you might want to hit it here and just make me have to hit the third shot, right? That's strategically a good play if you're trying to win while we're the serving team, right? You don't want to be aiming towards the sidelines ever on your return or towards the back line. It's hard to control the power on your return, as you know. So you want to give yourself margin for error while going deep, but away from the sidelines and away from the back line. So these three targets are great. You still want to get pretty deep, right? You don't want to hit your return short. It's about the worst thing you can do, but get them pretty deep. And these three targets, this is all you need to think about, and you're going to hit great returns. So what does that look like? I'm hitting my return, great target, like I said, right down the middle. I got that nice and deep. That's all you really need to do. You don't need to be overcomplicating your return. The main thing is that you're getting it deep, like we said, and you can be thinking about one of these three targets. Honestly, the main thing that you can differentiate on your return is a topspin return or a slice return, as you see right here. So a lot of more players are choosing to do the topspin, but the slice that you saw there is sort of the most common one that you'll see. If you want to be able to do topspin on your return, you need a gritty paddle because you're countering your opponent's spin. So if you want a gritty paddle, this is a good one. It's really cheap for the price. But in general, the main thing you're thinking about is not the most specific targets. It's just getting the ball deep and hitting a return that makes it challenging for your opponents to hit a good third.
Hey, real quick. If you need a new paddle and want a premium one without spending $200, you should consider getting the Sweet Spot team. It has a T700 carbon fiber face and all the same materials usually found in $200 paddles. But if you use code AIM at checkout, you'll get it for just $49. This deal is exclusive for our YouTube viewers, so go check it out. This code works for our other paddles as well.
So the next shot I want to talk about where to aim from the back of the court is the drive. So the drive is where we're hitting hard from the back of the court while our opponents are generally up. So a lot of time this happens on the third shot after your serve, And the drive is a very specific shot with very specific targets that work well. The first thing you want to keep in mind is that when you're hitting a drive, it should be pretty close to the net, about 3 to 6 inches over the height of the net. If it's higher than that, it's probably going to fly out, or your opponents are going to be able to hit down on the ball. So you want to keep the ball low. In terms of where you hit the ball on the court, generally you want to drive it down the line. So as you can see, Drew standing in front of me, and driving down the line is usually better because you are closer to the player that is standing directly in front of you. The cross-court player, or the player that'd be standing right here, has more time to react to a drive. In terms of the specific targets down the line, going down the middle, so more towards the middle, is probably the best place to hit the drive. And why? Is because neither me or my partner have much time to react, right? So when he hits it down the middle, we both have to decide who should take that ball. And most players aren't very good at doing that. So a lot of the time, if you go down the middle with your drive, you might get a free point. You might get a late reaction from one of the players. They might collide paddles. There's a lot of good things that can happen to you by driving down the middle. So it's probably the best target. The other place that's a great target is going right at a player that has worse reflexes. So as I'll tell you later, when you're up at the kitchen, you can sort of aim at your opponent's right shoulder, which is a good target on a drive, but it's pretty specific and you're kind of far away to be aiming like that. But if you see someone that you're playing against has bad reflexes, or they're not that good at responding to drives, you can sort of just target them, and you might get some stuff like that happening where they just don't respond quickly enough. And maybe you'll get lucky and you'll aim for that right shoulder, right hip region where it's really hard for them to hit the ball. So right shoulder, right hip, if you're going right at them, is the best spot to aim. But I would only really do this right at players that don't have good reflexes. I'm sure you've played people, when you drive at them, they don't know what to do, right? When you're playing against a player like that, go right here with the drive, and it works very well. When it comes to drops, so third shot drops or any shot you're hitting from the back of the court into the kitchen, the main thing you want to think about is the height that it's going over the net and where it's landing in the kitchen, but the actual targets that you aim for are important too. So when you're hitting a drop, it should be going about a foot over the net and it should be landing about a foot from the kitchen line. It's kind of hard to do that every time, but that's what you should be aiming for, and if you miss a little bit, it should be fine. In terms of where you aim in the kitchen, or where you aim in regards to where your opponents are standing, there's some specific things that most people don't think about, but that can make a big difference. The first is that if you hit a drop cross court, you're giving yourself more room for air because you're drawing an angled line now within the box so that you have more space, because an angled line is longer than a straight line in the box. So by going cross court, you give yourself more room and more consistency. Within hitting the ball cross court though, two great targets are down the middle and out to the angle. So on this side specifically, if Drew goes out wide, he's forcing me to hit a backhand, which it's really hard to attack if I'm getting a drop hit to my backhand. If he hits it too high, I can hit a roll volley, but if he can bounce this in front of me, there's not really much I can do offensively, especially if I have a bad backhand. So if you're on this left side, going really out wide is a great target. You can also go down the middle. When you go down the middle, you're getting the advantage of going at a slight angle, but you're also minimizing the chances you miss the ball out to the side. So going down the middle is a great target, especially if you can get it more towards this player's backhand. So a lot of the time, most of the time, there's a righty on this side and they have a backhand right here. If you can get the ball to land right there, it's a really effective target to force them to hit a backhand. So on the right side, if you're dropping from the right side, this is probably the best target for the most consistency and for the least likelihood that they're going to be able to attack. On dinks, when everyone's at the kitchen, you'll see that the best targets are actually really similar to the best targets on drops. So my favorite places to aim for are the backhands of players sort of out to their sides. You see me and Drew are both righties. His backhand's out wide and mine is more towards the center. Really the goal when you're dinking is to move people side to side and get them off balance. So if you see someone standing closer to their backhand, you can totally get them out wide to their forehand as well. These are just two places that you'll get a lot of pop-ups by aiming for. So most dink rallies take place cross court and then you change directions down the line. So generally I'm hitting my shots cross court like this, and then occasionally I'll hit the ball down the line where I can still aim for these targets, but generally that player will go cross court to your opponent. So usually these targets are thought about more in a cross court setting. So when I'm dinking cross court with Drew, I want to get him off balance, like I said, by moving around. I can go out wide to his forehand. But this target right here, where I go right into his backhand, is a great target to get pop-ups A lot of players aren't really comfortable when you go at their inside foot like that, which is why I have that as probably the best target to go for when you're dinking on the right side like this. On the left side, the out wide target against a righty is really effective because you can pull them out and you can hit it actually pretty hard when you go for more of an angle. You can go for a topspin dink right at their left foot. And if you get it at the right spot, they can't hit an ATP. So if I go too angled like this, Drew can kind of try to go for an ATP, right? But if I'm getting it at that angle, if I'm aiming for the corner of the box, it's probably not going to go off far enough for him to hit an ATP. And I can get it to land behind him if I do it right. So it doesn't even have to be topspin. You can also do this with a slice dink. It's a great spot to aim for when you're going cross court on the left side. When it comes to targets on speed ups or in volley wars, so let's say I'm dinking and I want to go for a fast shot to try to end the point. When it comes to those types of targets, when you're attacking from the kitchen and your opponents are also at the kitchen, they're very specific, and there's some that work very well, and there's some targets that are very, very bad and you need to avoid. So when I'm going for a shot in a fast exchange at the net, my number one thing I want to keep in mind is that I want to keep the ball low. So when I'm going for any fast shot at the net and my opponent is also at the kitchen, the first thing I'm thinking about is keeping the ball low. So I don't want to hit the ball high. So I hit the ball high here, he can crush it down, right? So keeping the ball low is of the utmost importance, but there's different levels of how low you can hit the ball based on how high the ball is, which I'll cover in a second. The next thing you want to keep in mind though is that going down the line here is even more important than going down the line on drives because we're really close, right? I'm way closer to the guy in front of me than I am to the guy that's diagonal from me. So when I go for a speed up or a shot at the guy in front of me, he has like half as much time to react as this guy. So it's way better to go down the line, especially when you're speeding the ball up. So I'm going for a speed up. Usually I'm thinking somewhere in this area. You can go for cross court ones too, and they work occasionally. This is probably where you want to go 75% of the time though. Within going down the line, I want to think about three main targets. The first is what we've already talked about, and it's right down the middle. If I can go right down the middle and neither of them are ready, I can get the point very consistently there. The problem with going down the middle is sometimes people know you want to do that, and so they're waiting on it. They think, oh, he's going to speed up down the middle. He's waiting for that, and he's ready to crush it like he just did there. So the next best spot to aim for is what we call the right shoulder, right hip, which I already talked about that too on drives. But when you're here, you can really get it specific. So I can really aim. I try to aim for Drew's right elbow. If I go for Drew's right elbow, he has to kind of like lean away from it to be able to hit the ball. If he has a continental grip, you can't get your paddle in position quickly enough when someone aims at you there. So that's why that's a very common spot that people aim for, and it's also very effective. The next one that I aim for is a little bit riskier, and it is down the line. So if Drew's, let's say, shifted a little bit this way, in this situation, I can try to go for a speed up down the line, right? I just see an opening, which high-level players generally won't give you those openings, but if you're playing against someone that's giving you openings, you should try to take advantage of them, and they'll work sometimes. So that's a riskier one. The middle and the right shoulder are probably the best targets. But as I mentioned, when you're up here, hitting the ball low is probably the most important thing. The problem is when I'm hitting a speed up, I'm probably hitting it from around this height. I can't hit it hard and low. I have to hit it over the net. So I can't really hit a speed up low. But as I progress through a rally, if I start getting the ball higher and higher, now I can start going more closer to Drew's feet. So as you progress through a hands battle, you obviously want to think about the targets we just talked about, but hitting lower is way more important and useful and effective when you have a higher shot. So if you have a higher shot in a hands battle, getting that ball low becomes more important than all the targets we just talked about. So you really are using those targets to get a higher ball that you can go low at them. You should still aim for the same targets, but low. The one spot you probably want to avoid against some players is right at their body towards their backhand. So here, a lot of players sit on that shot and they have a very quick response. So they're standing like this, with their paddle already facing towards their backhand. So it's super easy for them to reflex that back. Some players though, they don't have that shot down. Maybe they have a better forehand. Usually though, you're better off aiming for the player's forehand, but sort of assess what they're good at responding to, then aim for their weaknesses. The next place you need to think about your targets, it's highly overlooked, but it's when you're up and your opponents are back. So up here I have my rolls, where I'm rolling the ball out of the air, and I got my smashes. So that's where your opponent hits the ball too high and you can smash the ball. So when I'm hitting these shots, it's very simple where I want to aim. I want to aim out to my opponent's sides at the depth of their feet. So the depth of their feet, I say that, if my opponent's back, the depth of their feet is just as deep as I can safely hit it. So here I kind of want to go more towards the middle or more out wide. Depending on which side is worse, I can aim for that one. But as he starts to move forward, I want to go more towards his feet. So I might actually need to slow the ball down to get it at the depth of his feet, because if I hit it too high here and I go for too deep of shots, he can actually intercept it out of the air. The other thing to think about on these shots is a lot of the time they're going to get the ball back. You're kind of moving them side to side within those targets to set yourself up. So what you might do is maybe I'm gonna roll at Drew's feet, he's gonna pop it up, then I'm gonna smash to the other target. So what that would look like, I'm gonna roll it towards the center, he pops it up, and I can smash it to the open court. So you kind of are moving him around in order to create a gap that you can thread with your smash. And if you're having trouble, guys, with these targets and you're thinking it's a little bit challenging to aim for them, the only way to get more accuracy is with practice. That's why we made the Dink Master, but you need to come out here and think about targets when you're playing. If you're not thinking about where you're aiming the ball, you're not gonna get more accurate. So just know, when you come out to the courts, think about these targets and you're going to play way better. And if you wanna watch a video about the most important technique mistakes that I see players making, watch this.